Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Dwight Johnson, and I'm originally from California, and now here. So, anyway, about 4 or 5 years ago, I started writing a book called Faces of Darla. And Darla is an acronym for Damned Affliction, Ruined Legs, and ... Because I have a form of muscular dystrophy. So the book I'm writing deals with living with chronic pain and disease. And so there's some poems and some couple short bits from the book. And we're going to kind of trade off. I'm going to read, and then my cousin Heather from Aussie is going to read for a little bit. And then we're going to take a break, have some ukulele music, and then we'll do a second set. So anyway. Oh, I stand naked before you, and you hold no smirk. You gaze intently, and you stand naked too. So here I am, naked before you, and God, is it tough to do. If you stay down, gone too long, you'll atrophy the muscles of the topsy-turvy frown. If you stay down too long, the tongue will neglect taste and forget how to speak, but abruptly. If you stay down too long, you'll forget that slow dance of healing hands, of the violin bowing of arms on someone's pain-leaden feet. If you stay down too long, people will seem stupid, make you angry, and the steam will merely evaporate into you. If you stay down too long, the blessed notes of your laughter will be hushed by the mere smolder of harumphs, groans, and snoring. If you stay down too long, phones remain incessant in their beckoning. Letters unanswered or inquired after, doors unrattled by knuckle. If you stay down too long, getting up may not seem an obvious solution or any longer an option. Body me. Oh, how I would want to just run and jump to slough off this withering coil, though I know this dangling flesh enveloping bones and tendon and muscle and the sundry tissue is not me. It is not who I am. But when I look in the mirror, the me that I am can only think that I am looking at myself. And I sometimes want to wrench my being outside of myself because other people are beautiful, man. The aging gent who stoops with cane, the fat old hag with matted hair and warts, the skinny kid with missing front teeth, the velvet-skinned black woman with thick, moist lips, the cracked-skinned man in dirty clothes and ripped shoes, the chubby child with diapers drooping kneeward. These are the beautiful people, man. They and the other people like the blonde in a wheelchair grown fat with discomfort, the three-fingered boy with the soccer ball, the Choctaw woman waiting for her disease, the blind little girl who learned that unseeing eyes can sparkle brightly, the necklace old cuss who used to throw football and chase it and run with it and make the girls with it, the balding guru who wears loose cloth, the aging hippie, out of touch and out of his mind. These are the beautiful people, man. They and the others who are not what they appear to be, with their sagging breasts, their knobby knees, with scared eyes and trembling cracked lips, the jaundiced eyes and broken teeth, savaged limbs and broken teeth, and ravaged faces, with fat ears and unkempt beards. They are not what they appear to be. I know that. But when I look into the mirror and see this misshapen, at times decrepit form, I want to wail and die and be done with the me that it seems I cannot refrain from equating with the me that I truly am, with the me that has again learned to walk, only to fall back into the wheels of some fabled pram of long ago, with the me that sits and knows, that this feeling is shit and feels stupid and ridiculous once again for feeling the failure of his body anew. This is called helping out. Having fallen, I faced the sky and I prayed to the moon. She remained cold, bright, indifferent, her face not changing. I prayed to the sun, and he reflected the hell, then hid behind the horizon, unable to look me in the face. I prayed to Jesus, he was busy being dead. I prayed to Mother Mary, she was busy bleeding. I prayed to God, he was grieving for his sin. I prayed to Allah, but he was embarrassed. I prayed to Buddha, he was too fat with contemplation. I prayed to the Hindi kings and queens, but they were deaf with the prayers of the billions. I prayed to the Olympians. They were out of vogue. I prayed to a kid running down the alley. He stopped, stooped, and he lent me his hand. To hold on loosely is very hard to do. A time may come to let go tightly. What do I do with the linen? So many times I have done this, taking the linen from the bed. How many years ago was it that I first changed them? The memories this linen holds, our couplings, our dreams, our kids, and that damn dog of yours. These linens where we watched each other's fantasies, dried each other's tears, where we kissed each other well again and never once went to bed angry. How many forgive me's do these sheets and cases hold? How many stains from our writhings? How many bedwetting babies who learn to shit and burp and pillow fight? What do I do with the linen that we and the kids and that damn dog of yours used to make sailboats with or bounced around in tussles? What do I do with the linen that soaked up our farts and dried our drool? And what do I do with the linen that captured your last breath? This is from a chapter called Even Jerry's Kids Get the Flu. There are days when I think, why do I have to go through this all the time? And then there are days when I wish that having to deal with all things muscular dystrophy were the only things I had to mess with. I sincerely wished that were the case for the months or so in 2002 when my mom died. Like the telling of a good joke, sometimes life is all in the timing, so one can appreciate the punchline or the elegance. As I wasn't working at the time, my disease was fairly controlled, and I was the one brother who didn't have a family of his own to care for. I ended up making the trip from Montana to Arizona and back twice. My job was helping remove Mom from life support, trying to take care of Dad and getting him moved up with us, helping to plan the funeral, business calls that come with the death, the family calls, visits, hosting grieving guests, packing, unpacking thousands of miles of driving, etc. There was so much to do, as there always will be, for anyone in a similar situation. The problem was that I wasn't taking care of myself at all. I was smoking and drinking way too much. I wasn't sleeping or eating properly. Taking the meds was intermittent, if at all. I wasn't stopping physical activity or slowing it down anyway when my body started going south, so to speak. To top it all off, because I was going through that time more as an automaton than a human, trying to shut off my brain from the physical pain and the emotional turmoil, I hadn't allowed myself to really cry. Part of me wanted to so desperately, and another part was too struck in crisis mode to allow it. Mom's death, apart from her living the 63 years kind of gradual dying, was sudden. As often happens with an unexpected death of someone so dearly loved, a kind of shock set in. When the body experiences an intense, sudden trauma, shock can take over. The body holds its heat to the major organs to protect and preserve them. An unconsciousness can ensue that enables one to better endure pain. Ah, sweet unconsciousness. And to keep one's body quiet to minimize further injury to it. Shock is the safety switch flipped on so that the body can do what it must to heal. Your body kind of kicks you out of the way so it has the energy to do what needs to be done. Emotional shocks do that similarly. At least it did to me. What I mostly recall from the day we took Mom off the machines was more songs in my head than a sense of emotion. Rather than crying about the decision that had to be made and Mom's dying, an old spiritual insinuated itself into my thoughts. The lyrics, "Take my mother home, please take my mother home," replaced anger and grief. Mom's coma was medically induced to help her body cope with the pain and the sepsis that was attacking her organs one by one after her colon had burst. We had arranged for our family to gather together that Sunday morning at my uncle's house in Montana. At the appointed time, I called them. While Mom's mom, sisters, brothers, sons, and grandkids, along with other family members, said their goodbyes to her, I held the phone to her ear. Most of us realized that she couldn't hear us, but it was important that the last words be spoken, partly in hopes that even in her medically induced state, she might hear or know that she was well loved, but to also allow the family to begin to release the grief that they were feeling. I listened in as some of them spoke, partly to know when the call was over, but also that I might later be able to tell Pop some of the things that they had said. As the call progressed, Pop took turns standing and sitting at the foot of the bed, rubbing Mom's toeless feet. Both he and I would have to be tested for hepatitis for the next year, as Mom's body was so poisoned. It felt so very wrong to have to wash our hands after we touched her, as if we had done something wrong. Pontius Pilate came to mind, actually. I felt as antiseptic emotionally as the soap in the dispenser we used to wash from. Once in a while, I'd stretch my hand to his and squeeze it and tell him a bit of something one of his grandkids had just said to her. I was trying to comfort him as best I could, though it was in a business-like demeanor, not in a shared grief at that point. Before I hung up, I talked to my brothers and they spoke words with Pop. Goodbyes were done with. I don't know what went on afterwards at my Uncle Dale's, but in Mom's ICU, with the doors closed, Dad and I took turns rubbing Mom's feet, holding her hands, or talking a bit as we waited for the doctor to show. All we could hear was the whir of the machine that kept Mom's breathing and the blips and the bleeps of the overhead monitor. Apart from the tape loop in my head of Harry Belafonte singing, Please take my mother home. The monitor seemed as emotionally detached from the scene as I was. That song was my personal companion through the morning-filled morning and into the afternoon. Mom died, and I left Dad to be alone with his thoughts and grief and her body as I went to call my brothers to let them know that she had gone from us. With that old gospel song sounding through my brain, I went back to Mom's room to say my goodbye to her. But I found that Pop had been taken to ER for a possible heart attack. At that point, Belafonte's words and tune were replaced by the lyrics and music for Depeche Mode's song Blasphemous Rumors. And I think that God's got a sixth sense of humor, and when I die, I expect to find him laughing. Soon the two very lyrics mated. They were a strange combination, but both perfectly expressed what I felt that day. I think I heard him say, and when I die, I expect to take my mother home, laughing, please, take my mother home. And I think that God's got a sixth sense of humor, home, take my mother home. Perfection. And yes, Pop was fine. Thank you for asking. He just hadn't eaten all day and the stress had overcome him. And I think that God's got a sixth sense of humor. When an emotional shock happens, emotions can shut down. As when the body goes into shock to protect the major organs, emotional shock will do so similarly. It shuts down to protect our minds for a time. For a long time after my emotions were much shut down, I didn't really laugh, though mentally I knew something was funny. And I might have cracked a joke or made some attempt at sniggerish humor, generally leaning towards the dark side of funny, but I wasn't able to really laugh. I didn't feel love either. Though I knew I loved certain people, I didn't feel it. It happens like that with me sometimes. My trips with Pop back to Montana for her funeral and a week later, the trip to Arizona and back were maybe the best times I'd ever spent with him, though it took me several years to realize it. On the trip moving him back to Montana, he told me family stories as we drove through New Mexico, Colorado, and Nebraska. We'd taken the long way home as Pop needed an eye surgery in Bismarck, North Dakota. We listened to college baseball playoff games and stopped at the Lawrence Welk Museum, which for me was thankfully closed. Our last day on the road, we took a detour onto the Enchanted Highway, which was dotted with multiple giant sculptures along the two lanes. At times, I find myself wishing we'd been able to do one other road trip on a less grueling time frame and under less stressful circumstances. And I wish we could have done it at a time when I wasn't in emotions all off mode. I turn my emotions off like that when I'm in a lot of pain too. Physical pain. I mean, it could also happen when multiple things are going on where each thing brings some kind of emotional stress all at once. There was a point where I had 5 people, friends or relatives, who all died within 2 weeks of each other. I've been told I'm just too damn sensitive about things and that I just need to man up and deal. That might be true in some cases. It just might be true. My caveat to that half-hearted admission is this. The sensitivity generally comes on in behalf of someone else. If someone falls, an older person perhaps, I usually feel bad and try to help them right away. Of course, if it looks funny when they fall, I'll laugh at how it looked as I help them up, but I won't laugh about them actually falling. For several months, the most pain I felt when Mom died was when her perfumed nightie disappeared. Dad was so mad and heartbroken, he looked all the more lost. It was as if the nighty disappearing had fully erased Mom from the face of the earth. It made her death more real to Dad. His heartache was what got to me. It was the only time I came close to tears, and it wasn't the actual loss of my mother and friend, but for the anguish that Dad felt. Breathe, just breathe, breathe, just breathe. Rearranging shadow on a candlelit wall, dividing shade and light into entities of circumspection, symbiotic reflections of breathing, just breathe, altering the prayer to throw the images of flowers dead and rocks about across the space called time, reveling in the flicker moves of subtle chill and sadness breathing, symbiotic reflections of breathing. Now I'd like to introduce to you. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce to you Heather Taylor Johnson.
Well, I think I'm just going to read about family as well. It just seems fitting today, so. This book I wrote because I was thinking about all of the things around my house that I used to get me home, because I live in Australia. My family lives in America. So I made a list of things, and this poem opens the book, and it's called Things. Mom might remember this day. Familiar, yet the fabric of this couch still unstretched. No smudges or stick on the white shag carpet where my toes warm themselves and fiddle. Home is a relative term. This family meeting, festive, somber, we joke as brother and sister do, while Mom lays trays of dip and Dad spreads out the papers. The last time we met for the discussion of the wills, I was too young to drive, though I had a say in euthanasia. Now I am grown. I've flown faster than the sun and turned back time to be here, where the dishes are the same, but I'm unsure in which cupboard they reside. Residence is impermanence. Dad, with his lips like mine, asks if there's anything we want to claim so nothing becomes messy. I'm stuck on claim and mess. Mom is busy asking about jewelry. Wouldn't I want jewelry? I'm thinking it's the things that are meant to sum them up. My brother and I are still, save for my toes in the carpet and his allergies waiting for the rain. Everything Rolling Stones to my dad, because that is how we've related. Thought the other really cool, saying words aloud on family road trips and years later over tequila. My father gushes quietly, as is his way with pride. Thunder rumbles in my stomach, and briefly we look into each other's eyes. Mother, daughter. Sorry. Father, son, mother, son, brother, sister, daughter, father, husband, wife. The breeze through the lanai has become wind and swelled to a howl. My skin pimpling as I rub my arms, dream of Ugg boots imported into Florida. Do you want a blanket? Then, as if to counterpoint, your piano, ignoring shipping and the trauma of the riotous waves, a large crate splintering what would be my lingering pain. Why would I want the baby grand when at 9, don't you remember, I became so frustrated with my mom's teaching I stopped playing the piano? What about 5? Remember the tiny ballerina behind you all around as you played straight-backed and wrists relaxed, because I will never forget. My brother's fingers touch, waste time. You ask this now? He laughs. We know it is not funny. Keith Richards and J.S. Bach and the shouting rain on the condo's roof keep a heavy beat. The steady gutter of water, like strings. Okay. So I wore this necklace today. It's just ram's horns. It's for an Aries. My dad was an Aries, and he gave this to me. It's in the poem. I don't need to explain it. Anyway, I wore this necklace today. So it all turned out good. All right. So this poem is called My Father. In a forward move toward the second phase of the day that held within its grip the loosely structured walk on the coast, the playground and the fish and chips, the perusing of the grocery aisles, and the walk past the old freight trains, we returned to our tent for one last swim. When the wind picked up, the swimming, the chatting, the laughing had ceased, and in that moment, I put my hand to my chest to catch my breath, gulped the frenzied flow of air, and felt the space of the missing pendant I'd worn for 23 years. The groover, enlightened, my father, an Aries, just like me, at 17, had worn the horns of a silver ram around his neck, and at 14, I'd watched him clasp it at the back of mine, and in that moment, all I really understood was that I had become a groover like him, one of the enlightened, now somehow with family values summed up in a necklace. Somewhere in Port Lincoln it lay, like a 20-cent piece, not so shiny anymore, in places scraped with time and the touch of my fingers feeling, forever feeling. And in its absence I saw the past. His present, you still wear that smile, but felt the bareness of his spirit no longer clinging to my chest. So what is left? Of course I cried. It felt as if my father had died. So we found it. We found it. It was horrible. In a park. Luckily not in the ocean. Yeah, that was. Okay, here's another one from my mom. It's called Imagine Phone Calls. One day I'm going to scrub clean the cream blinds hanging in our kitchen window. Sun reflects oil and dirt, thick years of stovetop steam and drifts of sliced meat. All I can think of is my mother's house, how it smelled like an orchard, a pine forest, suntan lotion, depending on where you stood, how anything wooden was deeply polished and anything tiled sponge wiped down. What I want to know is this. When did she, loving swing shift working mom, husband scarcely ever there, find the time? It is enough for me to wash the dishes and the clothes, sweep the floor, count the coins, reflect on cacophonies in our apricot tree. It is morning when the sun is best. Our house is filled with a radiance I have no part in maintaining, yet I'm staring at the blinds, embarrassed, harassed. If I called her now for an afternoon tea and she accepted, bringing donuts, and during the dish stack counter clean, I pointed to the kitchen blinds, or the long table in the hall, the bedroom mirrors, the ubiquitous inside of the silverware drawer which catches sneaky breadcrumbs, I wouldn't even have to ask. Problem number 23 with transnational lives. Okay, this one is for my niece, who I haven't seen for 3 years, and I'm about to see her very soon. So it's called Emblazoned, and it's for Rebecca Locke. She is 5, the strongest person I know. The dirt of the oldest mountain has cracked beneath her feet. I think of the blood pumping in her chest, all covered by her fragile skin, how it floods her body, so when she jumps, the clouds move, animals prick their ears. My niece laughs for all that is good. She tells me a story about my brother and laughs, because he is good. He was always the funny one, so clever on his feet. I see her in my brother, so I listen, and she loves me for it, and I love her for it too. My brother, like my mother, smiles and cries while smiling, so I want to tell this 5-year-old girl that her life will be huge. She will feel to the point of overflow and gush without shame daily, and when she needs friends surrounding her, she will never be alone. Instead, I reach for her body. We form a most natural fit, as if we are used to each other, having only met twice. She thinks I am nice, and I make her happy. I think she is beyond belief. Don't want to let go. It is more than my brother and my mother and my niece wrapped in my arms. It is one of those things you don't forget. The things that are especially good because they cannot last. Perhaps I'll read a lighthearted one. This is about where I live in Australia. It's a town called Adelaide, and it's a pretty small city, and it's the third or the fourth biggest city in Australia. But it's pretty small in the way it feels. But February through March, which is our beautiful time of year, people from around the world come and go to a Fringe Festival and Adelaide Festival, and it's really fun. So this is called Gearing Up. There's some obscure station tuned in. It's funky, instrumental. Dresses and towels keep rhythm in the breeze while the pumpkin patch grows like a maze. Summer. Yeah. Adelaide has 2 seasons, wet and festival. Jumper wrapped in Ugg clothes, we live like squirrels, hoarding our acorns all winter long. So when summer comes, we are starving, searching our closets for brightness and what feels light, and we come together without a plan or map to guide us through the city's streets, and we celebrate with mango dripping down chins, Riesling splashing gold-painted glass rims. We celebrate ravenously the feast. Yeah, we have forest fires. Yeah, not in Adelaide, but the Adelaide Hills, which aren't so far away. And anybody who lives in the hills has, their fire plan. And if it's a hot day, they all stay home. Yeah. I'm not in danger of it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll read one more from this book and then hand it back over to my cousin. Or we'll have a break. Yeah. This is called Split. I claim Elvis, hips and lips, then that whole generation, and Beale Street. Gospel, rock, and blues. Hell, I'll claim the Mississippi River too. And if we've made our way on down the Gulf, I take Cinco de Mayo because Americans know how to cook beans that sit somewhere between firm and soft, and we say quesadilla properly. So then throw in black speak and native art because I spent my childhood in the deep south, my 20s in the desert, and man, I seen oppression through the window of my Ford Tempo, so there's a sort of kinship in my us and them. And yeah, the destruction of the Twin Towers, but not Bush, neither of them, and the monumental loss, the Grand Canyon and the Rocky Mountains, and the monumental space, and the open road, every diner, the ever-present fizz of Coke. So you might as well put me at a baseball game because I'll claim that too. You see, I don't get cricket or meat pies, but I do so love the Australian twang of my child's emphatic "Noi!" That's no. The way my man slips on his worn leather hard yakka boots to split our winter wood, and the smell of the sea, how it drifts to me wherever I am, when dusk clears its perfect throat and floats over the city's red roofs and seeps between the gumnut trees, and the way we rejoice in a morning rain, and the scent of eucalyptus it brings. These monumental things.
So, and before, I want to say a special thank you to Deirdre's Deli, the Grays Harbor Farmers Market, and also to Tammy and Dan Domeke for helping us do this. This is kind of like a special treat for Heather and I to be able to read together. It's our first time doing that, and I haven't read in public for about 17 years. So, anyway, this book came about because my nephew JJ, we were having coffee at the cafe that I started writing it at my sister's bakery. I don't know if any of you remember that one. But he asked me how I lived with my pain all the time and my disease. So I started writing him a letter, and that turned into this book. And I have 3 rewrites, and Heather graciously edited the 3rd one, so I'm on my 4th one now, and hopefully the last. But anyway, so I kind of read you some of the hard parts, of dealing with chronic pain and chronic disease, without getting into too much of the details. And the book has to do with dealing with doctors. Like there's a chapter called "If the Gown is Open in the Back, Cover Your Ass." And then there's, even Jerry's kids get the flu. And but then there's the parts that kind of have more to do with sensuality and our sexuality, because a lot of times you don't read books on chronic pain or disease that have to do with those topics. And I don't get into the nitty-gritty of it, apart from wheelchairs can be fun. But anyway, and there's also those moments in time that keep me going because of the laughter, and you never quite know what to expect in those kismet moments. So there is some healing, and that's kind of what this second part is. This one isn't exactly in the book, but it might be. It's called "It's Like I'm Dating," and it's written for Meredith W. and my youngest brother, Darren. You're 25. Really? God, it's like I'm dating my youngest brother. Only your chest isn't as hairy, and he's not as outgoing, and he's not the same gender, and you don't answer to his name, and your eyes are prettier, and his upper lip is covered with prickly whiskers, and your voice is higher and sweeter, and his shoulders are wider, his hips are too, and he smells of a year-old's baby drool. And he has a Mustang, and you drive Broncos, and you like country music, and he doesn't like the theater very much, and you play piano. Huh, you're 25. Really? My brother's into family comedies, and apart from the Bible, you read thicker books. And he doesn't swear near as good as you do, goddammit, and his eyes aren't as big as yours, and he won't wear dangling earrings or makeup. And his mother isn't as round as yours, and his father has more hair, but your father is more outgoing. And my brother drinks Cokes, and you like whiskey, and my brother listens to Irish jigs, and you dance to them, and he's married, and you're not married, are you? God, it's like I'm dating my youngest brother. Once I touched your flower, returned its nectar to my lips. In memory of that moment, I taste my fingers and I surge. I was coupling with you instead of reading last night, but I didn't miss a paragraph. Instead, I gleaned phrases, words, and stanzas, all visible in your eyes. This next one is based on a painting that a friend of mine did when I lived in Santa Cruz. And it's called Party in the Picture on the Floor in the Hallway. And it's actually a true story. Once, I was at a party. Well, the party was at my house, so I was there. Sweaty from dancing, I went to the restroom to wash my face. I brought the wash rag up and stopped. There were two eyes looking at me above a terry cloth veil. They were my eyes. I dropped the cloth into the sink, looking into the mirror of the medicine cabinet. While studying my face, I saw freckles fading, crow's feet growing deeper, cheeks peeling dry skin, hair plastered forehead, and I had left the door unlocked. Someone else came in. She stood behind me looking into the mirror, priming her hair with spray. Then a guy came in to practice one-liners on the mirror. Hey babe, come here often? Some camera girl came in taking pictures of the mirror. A sexless face came in to squeeze a zit that had come out as an unexpected party guest. Soon the party had moved to and was taking place in the bathroom. No one talked to each other, only to the reflections in the mirror with the bulging sides. There were 29 of us in the loo, 29 of us in the looking glass. There were too many of us. Too many reflections and too small a mirror, and so it broke, pieces falling into the drain of the sink. Only a small piece in the corner where my reflection was remained, dangling by a thin shard. I was again the only one in the mirror. Soon, even that piece fell to shatter. I was too much for so small a piece to hold. I was left standing, gazing at a bottle of aspirin, a bottle of Valium, and wondering how the party would end, and if I should even bother to buy a new mirror. This is called Battle of the Picket Fence. We had a family dog, more a mutt, named Teddy. When we first got him, I could hold him in the palm of my hand. He was the runt, and his mother rejected him. My family accepted him. Over time, he became the largest of the litter. He was a very friendly dog. He loved to run up, try to climb up on a lap, even if that person were standing there, and then lick them to death. He was quite the watchdog, too. If someone were nearing the backyard even, he'd start barking at them when they were half a block away. Arf, arf! Don't even think about coming in here, 'cause I'll lick you to death. Arf, arf. As they walked by, he'd shut up and sniff along the fence following them. Once they were a house away or two, arf, arf! Oh yeah, run away, you lucky you didn't come in here. I would have tried to climb on your lap even while you stood there. Arf, arf! And don't come back. He was a very brave and articulate mutt. As we had rabbits and a small tortoise, my mom had put up a 2-foot-high picket fence around a small garden in the backyard. She grew asparagus, beans, and the like. It mostly kept Teddy out, too. One night I was just getting home from somewhere and had come into the backyard from the garage. Mom had just watered the garden, and the sidewalk was a little cleaner, though wet from it, too. Teddy came running up and jumping on me, trying to lick my face. I was trying to walk, and he kept damn near tipping me over. And then he did. He jumped just as I was taking a step. Now, the Libra in me is challenged when 2 feet are under me. In short, my balance is bad. With 1 foot placed solid, my balance sucks. With 2 feet placed solid, my balance sucks. With 1 foot planted and a very friendly, over-rambunctious mutt jumping on me, timber! I went from planted on a sidewalk to planted in the mud with the beans and the carrots as my neighbors. I was so awkward a looking vegetable that I thought I heard the asparagus sniggering. I really did look like a fallen twig of a tree. My face had taken a sudden root amidst the puddled rows of green. My trunk and legs were leaning at a severe angle over the fence as my braces grew out from my shoes and up my legs. There was just enough room for the pickets to trap themselves between them and my legs. Picket, brace bracket, picket, leg. Picket, brace bracket, picket. And that was just my left leg. My right leg was identically entangled. Face down, belly angled upward, hips and knees locked, the picket fence and braces entwined, toes pointing downward, a real 6'4" sprawling human weed fallen that was hoping that the dog that had just leapt the fence with joy and was licking a mud-plastered face wouldn't do what most dogs do when they see a tree. Teddy was so happy to have a friend join him in the mud that he panted into my face, licked my cheeks and lips. He scurried and darted about my muddied head. Every time I pushed myself out of the muck, he'd attack my face with gleeful tongue. All the while, I was trying to rid my mouth of the mud and the rabbit turds that a friend of mine, Franz, called Cocoa Puffs. As I pushed up, I'd call into the house for a little help. The garden was about 10 yards from the kitchen door, so I had very little in the way of hope that my beseechments for some aid might come. I knew my folks were home, so I had to try. I'd get no more than a "Pooh! Help!" when my loving dog would knock an arm out from under me or pounce my head back into the soggy sod. As it happened, Mom and Dad were playing pinochle or some such game at a table, and my mom heard some stirring of commotion. She'd looked out and didn't see much in the darkness and fog. She started to walk away when she heard a noise yet again. She went back to the door and turned on the porch light, only to see the two soles of my shoes sticking up in the air over the fence and Teddy jumping about in some playful garden game. She told my dad to come out back with her and opened the door, and out the door they came. When they were close enough to see the full predicament I was in, they did exactly what anyone else would do. They laughed their asses off. I started laughing with them a little bit, but the mud and Cocoa Puffs and the soul bugs were choking the giggles out of me. They set to work in extricating me from the garden and the fence. The strange garden fruit had been picked. Apart from a severely bruised ego and some picket fence scrapes on my shins, I was able to walk. Perhaps a tad slower than before, but into the house, only to find that my folks had guests who were soon to be regaled with a certain story of how I'd become so muddy and how Teddy had found a new game to play. Thank you. This last one is called Crazy, Crane Dance of the Crazy. So dance. How? With abandon. How I want to do that. Yes, oh yeah, to dance and live with abandon, to forget what people say I must do, to neglect what I tell myself I must do. A much harder secret to learn, that one. To throw away all hope, need, want, responsibility, fear, and just dance with abandon. God Almighty, do that dance. Yes, oh yes, that crazy crane dance of the crazy. Thank you. Now I'd like to once again invite Heather Taylor Johnson.
I'm going to start off by reading one poem from this book. Is called Exit Wounds, and it's birth poems and death poems, so that's where the title came from. So this is when our middle boy was just born. And it refers to footy, which is Australian rules football, which is quite different than our football. In fact, we call our football gridiron football in Australia. But footy is kind of like soccer and football mixed together. It's a real flowing sort of thing, so it's very, very different. Gumtree combusts in the heater, and I'm as cozy as I've ever been. Sweatpants, Ugg boots, maternity bra, and that shirt I got from the brewery in Utah where we drank polygamist porter. It was a year post-wedding, a year pre-children. He's drinking a lager now, which he brewed with cardamom pods, and then poured into that fine glass mug we bought from Heather Mountain Lodge, haven from the rain, and he's wearing his club scarf of bulldogs through and through, and I realize I'm getting into footy. Our tacker, that's our tacker over there. He's not such a tacker anymore. Our tacker on the cushions with the stuffing pushing out yells, "Oh, he got it! Well done! Go the Blues!" Or the Bombers, or the Power, or the Dockers, whichever pops into his enormous little mind, and our baby's on a rug with toys dangling down toward his enormous little astonished eyes, and I laugh at the commentators, call some player by his name, get nervous before a set shot. I'm thinking warmth, the gum tree combusting, the boys, warmth, the hanging photos in front of me, the two of us, naked shadows in the sand, the Korong over Easter, the three of us, shadows in the pebbles by the lake at the foot of the glacier in Montana, and the sun on the backs of our necks. Warmth. The next one will show 4 shadows touching, destination not yet known. I never watched football in America, never watched a Super Bowl, or had a favorite team. Never knew the uniform colors or mascots by name, but then I never knew the smell of kindling from a newspaper and a dead gum tree branch. I'd never had rivers flowing through my breasts, and I'd never shared a bed with a dedicated sports fan. I never imagined this bustle contained in a small living room could be part of the build-up to the grand final. And on that day, I wish for rain, the sound of it on our tin roof, the players sliding in thick, cold mud and losing grip on the slippery ball. So warm. And in 2010, which is the year I met these guys, the year I remember meeting these guys, we lived in a small mountain town named Salida in Colorado, and it was 7,000 feet in the air, and our backyard was just mountains, 14,000 feet mountains, and it was a wonderful year, and I fell in love with my husband again, so it was a really special year. So I'll read a few poems from Letters to My Lover from a Small Mountain Town. I think I'll read the one about the cousins first. Okay, it's called Distant Cousins. Maybe we met when I was 6, in a dry desert next to a pool where a few years earlier I'd almost drowned. And when the sun went down, I complained about mosquitoes. Of course they devoured my fresh young blood dancing around summer-tanned skin because they were drawn to the pool of water in an otherwise parched Sonoran Square, my father's sister's home. The both of you, teenagers, already 6 feet tall, maybe into Kiss and AC/DC. I would not have known you, I spending all day in the swimming pool or jumping on the trampoline, lazing in the arms of my mother and father. You were boys, nearly men, and I stood surrounded by too many adults in a land so far from our home it took 3 days of driving to get there. 30 years later, I've come from Australia, 2 days of flying and a month of driving to finally arrive in Aberdeen, famously the birthplace of Kurt Cobain. So tragically grunge, the smokestacks, the bricks, both of you now towering well beyond 6 feet. I can see your tragedies, how they rest in your eyes, the way you wear your heavy shoulders, as if they were too much to accept. I want you as my family, immediately. I want you to someday comfort me. One of you has an unwilling body, takes Vicodin and afternoon naps, cannot sleep while your city sleeps, and haven't for many years. It's okay. It's when you write. And though I sneak moments while babies nap, we have this between us. Talk about ways to write about pain, feel validated, exuberant, unladen by the artist's life. And you, the younger, have problems of your own, but you are the carer, noticeably stronger, your cupboard scattered with cans of tomato soup and a few tins of tuna. You make us beef stew, give us your bed, make sure at the last minute we have an extra blanket. In the morning, over the pond, there is fog. I am packing the car for more road, more camping, more America, and my husband and children. Sadness catches in my chest as I inhale Pacific mist, wonder if we'll see each other again. Australia's so far it bends even time. At our age, we think about these things. Family, mobility, the hesitation of each day. Funerals, also too easy to imagine. The mosquitoes are out, skimming the pond and biting fresh my hot Johnson blood. I trap a few when I slide close the door to the car. They are nasty little pests, but something at least I can take away. Comfort comes any way we let it. There's a few ladies in the room. This is for us. It's called Ladies' Night at the Vic, and my mom's been to that pub, and it is a wild ladies' night we have there at this pub in Colorado. We leave it behind. Finances, mismatched Tupperware, containers and lids, the novel on the nightstand with a receipt as its mark. We leave it all. Cars, phones, babies, rubbish, and we fly. We drink wine, listen to movable music, and move. Laugh, so sick of crying, laugh and say, I know, I know, I know. There are women wanting men with their big talk and big arms, and other women having men in out-of-way corners, and some like us, who leave it behind, who walk through the town linking arms, dance with hands to the sky, touch shoulders with palms harmonious, and laugh and say, I know. All right. Guthrow, I'm going to read this for you. You should remember this day. It's called Jocks and Socks. There is a hill beyond this clothesline which rolls over shrub and sneaking cacti, which silently and brilliantly bloom for a week. You'd miss it if you weren't searching. My boys, exploring the hill in your father's T-shirts hanging to your bruised knees, your sandals letting the prickles in from the hill which slips in the random foxhole and is covered by 1,000 clusters of pellets dropped by the gathering deer, your ankles equally bruised and tough, those tools made of perfect found wood from an elm, or maybe a discarded fence, or the thickness of tangles and sticks at the bottom. You will become men one day. When I'm hanging out laundry in front of this hill, I will notice a shortage of jocks and socks, how still the distant sound of a motor or robin calling for the day. I will sit in the sun, soak up the minutes of an afternoon, then become surprised I'm missing the days without enough hours. For now, be boys. Dig, extract, let the worries of this vast old earth fall to someone else's shoulders. Suspend time so day lasts through the night. And when it ends, it has to end. With mosquito bites and dirt-streaked cheeks, empty your hands of all rocks and gems, and strip your shirts of sun and dirt, the odd strangling vine of a beautiful weed which eventually had to cease its growth. And give me not enough hours in a day. Your laundry, my boys, your dirty clothes. Okay, this is about the mountains in our backyard that I was talking about. It's called Tree Line. Past the point of tree growth, where the sky opens to the wind, I open to you. I'm not surprised. This was always our journey. We take each breath as if our last. The higher we get, the dizzier the exhale, twisting our ankles and falling on the palms of our scree-burnt hands. Mostly we indulge in water and views, things our bodies need. So now we are here, Tree Line, where I can look at you freely without analyzing my love, where I can walk toward you in this gaping space, sturdy feet atop rock and snow, where I can say to you, this is not a place where trees die. It is where they dream of living. I'm just going to read one more, so I'm going to pick out just the right one. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, it's called Somehow Life Just Blamelessly Was. Not quite sure when the ho-hum began, never expected maternal resentment. You were there, surrounded by nature and a happy home. I asked the clouds to wait for me, but they gathered themselves in enormous bundles and silently took off. I asked the wind to walk with me, but it, of course, was one step ahead. I asked the sun, what time? Why now? In answer, it rose even higher. I asked the grass to be a cushion that I may sit upon as I watched the sun rise until it began to fall over. It thought me selfish. It thought me privileged. I asked the sea to bury the sand when the day scorched and burned my heels, but it made love to the sand, made my heels crack. I asked you to laugh, touch, feel, speak, cook, sire, harvest, teach, fix small things, be happy, be proud, grow, learn, deal with the insects I can't stand and any dead animals in our way, to massage, nourish, reach, and comfort, to be here and always to be truth. You took me to the mountains. I stopped asking. Thanks for coming.